The FV4005 has what is almost certainly the largest gun ever fitted to a tank. It marks the high point of the race throughout the history of armored warfare to build bigger and bigger guns that could defeat thicker and thicker armor at longer and longer range. After this point, the advent of guided missiles and more advanced gun ammunition would allow this improvement to continue. But at far lower size and weight. The vehicle itself originated in the late 1940s. The British Army realized they needed to reliably destroy new Soviet heavy tanks and its potential successors, and get beyond the range that they could return fire, but they had no gun that could hope to do this. The intention was to mount the resulting weapon on a new, purpose-designed vehicle, the Heavy Gun Tank No. 2. Or FV215, some sources call it Heavy Anti-Tank Gun SP No. 2. There were concerns that the nascent Cold War could turn hot before it was ready in numbers. So a stopgap solution was also to be developed using the in-production Centurion tank hull. This was named Heavy Gun Tank No. 1, or FV4005. The requirement for the new gun was to defeat 152 mm, 6 inches, of armor plate sloped at 60 degrees at 2,000 yards. This was beyond any existing gun. The intention was that the round should be powerful enough to disable or disrupt a vehicle through any kind of hit, even if it was not physically destroyed. The gun was named the L4A1, and the caliber settled on was 183 mm, or 7.2. It would fire high-explosive squash head (HESH) ammunition. This ammunition was incredibly large and heavy and had to be loaded as a separate projectile and case. The projectile weighed 145 pounds, 65.8 kilograms, and was 29 3/4 inch or 76 centimeters long. The case, containing the propellant, added 67.75 pounds, 30.7 kilograms, and 26.85 inch, 68 centimeters. It had a muzzle velocity of 2500 fps, 762 meters per second, loading 183 mm ammunition into a Stage 2 vehicle. This requirement for FV4005 was issued in November 1950 and was to be fulfilled in 2 stages. Stage 1 was described as experimental only, intended to prove the suitability of this type of vehicle as a firing platform, and to solve problems connected with the handling of heavy ammunition. A small production was then planned of Stage 2 vehicles for service use. The gun mounting fitted to the Stage 1 vehicle could traverse through 360 degrees, but the recoil force meant that firing was only safely possible within a limited arc to the front. According to surviving blueprints, the gun could elevate and depress between -5 degrees and +10 degrees. A load assist system was fitted, which lined up projectiles and charge for the loader to then ram into the breech. It was fitted with a concentric recoil system around the breech end of the barrel, which required less space than a conventional recoil system. The hulls on both stages were fitted with a tripod gun crutch on the front glacis plate which supported the barrel at 2 degrees of elevation when the vehicle was in motion, and a recoil spade, similar in appearance to a dozer blade, on the lower rear. This would be lowered and dig into the ground before firing, helping reduce the proportion of the 87 tons of recoil force that acted on the vehicle and its components every time the gun was fired. FV4005 Stage 2. The Stage 2 vehicles were more representative of the final production configuration of the FV4005. The most obvious change was the fully enclosed turret, protected by a 14mm thick shell. But the gun mounting inside also had some significant differences. It had the same range of motion as Stage 1, but the load assist system was removed. Instead, a second loader was added to the crew, with each dedicated to loading either projectile or case. FV4005 with a Stage 2 turret. There was space for 12 rounds internally, along with a rail and winch system on the engine deck to allow for speedy reloading from a truck parked behind the vehicle. Firing trials were conducted in 1955. 150 rounds were fired with satisfactory results, although it had the same firing arc restrictions as Stage 1. The concentric recoil system on Stage 1 had suffered some faults during its firing trials. Stage 2 used conventional hydropneumatic recoil cylinders mounted above the gun instead, and this proved much more reliable. The project was cancelled in August 1957, along with FV215, although the gun's hitting power was enormous, due to the large size and relatively low velocity of the projectiles. They were susceptible to crosswinds. This reduced the gun's practical accuracy at its maximum effective range of 2,000 meters to an unacceptable level. The rate of fire was also too low, at just 2 rounds per minute. The decision was made that future long-range anti-tank capability was to be provided by missiles. The first of these to enter service, Monkee, had 1/3 the weight of a warhead and half the velocity of a 183mm round, but twice the effective range and far greater accuracy. In addition, it could be fired from a small, light-wheeled vehicle. FV4005 is one of the few surviving real-life vehicles that can be seen in the Bovington Tank Museum in Dorset, UK, in picture above. What you're watching in the background is recorded footage of this tank from the console version of the game, World of Tanks. Although the vehicle in this game is based on true representation of FV4005 from real life, it behaves nothing like it. It sprints across the field like a spring chicken and reloads fast enough to obliterate the enemy much quicker than in real life. Game designers decided to make this vehicle the king of tanks, and although the name is quite deserving, let's not get too far. As a matter of fact, let's see what Wargaming, the company behind creation of World of Tanks, says about this tank. FV4005 is a tank destroyer that's wielding the most devastating gun in the game, protruding from a massive box turret. The FV4005 Stage 2 affectionately became known as Shitbarn or Doombarn. The FV4005 Stage 2 was released as an alternative to the FV215B 183 in World War II mode. However, now it exists in first era of the Cold War mode introduced by Wargaming console a few years ago. Initially, the tank featured poor mobility, gun handling and no armor, therefore sacrificing survivability. That has changed drastically upon its Cold War mode release. It still has almost no hull armor, a very large paper-thin turret, but it picks up speed like a champion, mimicking a mobile medium tank with an enormous gun that can wipe any other tank from existence with just a single shell. This because the FV4005 Stage 2 received a balancing update to its gun handling and mobility. This was done in an attempt to kill the World War II version of the game, and isolate veteran players of the game. Off with the old, in with the new. In the current state, FV4005 sports superior gun accuracy, aiming time, and movement speed. With this monstrous weapon, the FV4005 Stage 2 is arguably the deadliest support weapon in the game. Try popping out shooting heavies while they are reloading, or giving the Thor's hammer of fire support to a pack of protecting mediums. It is a lot less forgiving than any other tank. Game designers ensured that aiming and timing of the attack is not always necessary, as it's exemplified in this footage. That said, you will need to keep an eye on the minimap at all times, since left alone versus a heavy tank might turn deadly. If a flank is failing, go lend your massive 183mm gun and shove that 65kg shell into someone's arse. The accuracy of this tank, although supposed to be extremely unreliable, is not really so, and you can easily snapshoot on the move. You might not hit every time, but if you don't try, you won't know. Use AP shells to penetrate heavy armor and hesh on everything else that moves. Aiming weak spots will help one-shooting tanks, therefore it's strongly recommended. However, auto-aim works as well, so it's your call at the end. Try sniping in this tank first. Medium to long-range shots will deal respectable damage. And taking the time to aim for weak spots will melt the HP of any vehicle who was unfortunate enough to be in front of you. Once game develops and there are only few tanks left, get hungry and go for those final kills to bump up your damage standing. If your patience is strong, awareness is keen, and with a little bit of luck, your gun will become the enemy's living hell. Couldn't have said it better myself. As for this battle, congrats to Monkee for bringing it back from 2v7. I'd expect less from him playing such a devastating overpowered vehicle. I hope you enjoyed a little history lesson and the quick look on its pixel representation in a video game where miracles do happen.